The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
This is Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. Do you want to live a more fulfilling life? Do you want to live your legacy and achieve your personal, professional, and financial goals? Well, coming up on Divya Parekh's Beyond Confidence, you will hear real stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and achievers who have stepped into discomfort, shattered their status quo, and are living the life they want. You will learn how relationships are the key to achieving your aspirations and financial goals. Moving your career or business forward does not have to happen at the expense of your personal or family life, or vice versa. Learn more at www.divyaparekh.com, and you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. This is Beyond Confidence, and now here's your host, Divya Parekh.
Good morning, listeners. What's up? I hope you had a great Valentine's Day, and I want to share Happy Valentine's Day to y'all. Sending you lots of love, and may the love surround you in all areas of your life throughout the year. So, folks, I really want to appreciate each and every one of you because you have shown us love by getting our books, as you can see in the back, Expert to Influencer, and The Entrepreneur's Garden. And of course, any of the books that we have written, feel free to get those because the profits from these books are going to entrepreneurs. Partial profits are going to entrepreneurs impacted by challenges. So thank you for showing your love. And I'm so blessed to have your love in my life because you are not only actively engaged, but you share with us what you want. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And as always, I am going to invite you with a call to action. Find that 1 hour of time every single month and help someone without any strings attached. And as you help, think about it. Even if 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 million people just in the US alone would help out, we are talking 100 million hours every month. And what could we accomplish, folks? So what we will be doing is in our coming shows, we will be highlighting what you have done in that an hour. So reach out to us and let us know how you are sharing that 1 hour with others. So without further ado, let's welcome Michael. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Lovely to have you. So Michael, I know you are in the execution and leadership arena. If you were to give a brief essence as to who you are, what would you say?
Well, that's a really hard question because there's so many different aspects to everybody, right? But I think if I could just kind of explain who I am from a sort of the general stream of what I've done in my life is I've always been a consultant. I've been in consulting since I first started business. When I began in banking, I was a consultant, internal consultant. And then when I graduated from grad school, I got into consulting, worked through consulting businesses up until about 20 years ago, in which I joined Brian Moran, who's the co-author of the Uncommon Accountability book. And we built a company called The Execution Company, and it's business execution. Some people laugh at that, but it's a company that's really designed to help our clients to accomplish more. And so I've really been a student in the last 20 years of what it takes to get things done. What are the barriers that you face? What are the things that kind of prompt you to take action? And everything that we've done together is really around that topic, is to help people accomplish more of what they're capable of to execute more effectively.
Mm-hmm. And that's definitely something, as they say, implementation is the key. We could have the best intentions, we could have the best strategies. Unless implemented successfully in the right way, you are going to still be left with that big hole of where you were before and where you want to be. So that said, let's start out your journey taking you back to the childhood. Do you have a moment where you recall even today, or do you have a person who left a mark on you?
That's also a very long list of folks. I suppose it was my father. When I was young, I had an idyllic childhood. I didn't realize it at the time, but it was pretty amazing. I grew up on a Christmas tree farm in northern Michigan. My mom was worked at home, and my dad worked in offsite. But anyway, the whole experience of my father seeding into me wisdom and helping me to kind of overcome some of the things that you experienced as a kid from a very gentle way. And his insight was always there with me. And I think about him today when I'm stressing out. I can hear my dad talking to me and telling me, "Hey, relax, do your best. That's all you can do." And that's I guess that's it. It's not very exciting, but that's where I came from. In terms of
Oh,
anybody who's really affected me, I think probably the largest influence in my life, and I think Brian might say this as well, is that each other. We challenge each other. He and I think differently, but we both are on a common path, and I think it's been a really great relationship because we do feed off one another. And I like to tell people that we're not Lennon and McCartney, but we might be the monkeys in terms of our content development. So we really work well together, and we come up with a lot of great stuff.
and that is so powerful to have a great partner by your side, especially with what's been happening in this past couple of years. People have been feeling the disconnect, not having a person by your side, not having those work relationships, and especially as consultants, it can be a lonely journey. So, congratulations on finding your workmate, so to speak.
Yeah, I've known Brian. He's probably my closest friend, and I've known him longer than longest relationship I've had in my adult life. So yeah, it's pretty good.
Definitely. And you talked about tree farms. And anytime you talk about it, just the experience of going there, cutting your Christmas tree and bringing it back is magical to me. And how was it growing up over there for you? Did you feel that magic or it was just routine for you?
That's a great question. I wouldn't call it routine or magical. It was a lot of hard work. The summers of shearing the trees, and then the falls of selecting which ones you're gonna harvest, and then cutting them and baling them in the snow of northern Michigan, and dragging them to a train and loading them on a train. That was that was a lot of work. And then after that, we'd be done with that though by the end of November. So it was always magical in our place at Christmas time, but it wasn't because of the harvesting of the Christmas trees. I can tell you that.
And that is the beauty of having different perspectives because here we are. Just imagine it's December, it's Christmas time, and everything seems magical. You want to go bring that Christmas tree. And so many times we do not ponder over what does it take for that Christmas tree? What is that journey from the time that seedling is taking root in the ground to blossoming into a full blown tree and then coming into your house and holding those wonderful ornaments and creating those cherished memories. So thank you for sharing that journey because it's so important to go deep into journeys like this because that's how it makes us connected as human to human beings.
Yeah, it's really interesting as you say that because anytime you plant a plant of any kind, but especially a tree, it takes a while to harvest. So you've got this period of investing, period of you're not harvesting at all, and you're pouring a lot of resources into the work, and you see the work progressing, but you don't really realize any of the benefits until much later, maybe 8 years or so. So there's this kind of I don't know what the right word is, but delayed gratification that you learn pretty quickly with that sort of thing.
Absolutely. So as you kind of continued your journey, where did your career take you? So give us a few highlights of your journey through that.
Well, so I started with the intention to be working outdoors. So I got a degree in fisheries and wildlife management from Michigan State University. And the funny thing about that is that it always gets a little bit of a laugh when I share that with people. But I did no work in that industry at all. I got into banking immediately after graduating from college, and I moved out to Virginia. Worked in a bank out there for a long time, and then I got into their internal consulting group. and began working with their offices and helping them become more productive. After that, though, I realized I needed more of a business degree, so I went back and got my master's in business administration. And then I left. Once I got out with that degree, I got back into consulting in a more formalized way, worked with a consulting firm out in California. And we were traveling all the time. So we were on 2 projects a week, and we were gone 50 weeks out of the year. So it was pretty intense for quite a long time. Then I moved to London. I worked with a consulting firm in London for a few years. I really like to travel. I like to experience different cultures. And so while I was in London, I was working in the Middle East, across Europe. And I've had a chance to work in a number of different places across the globe. So I've been really blessed by that. Came back to the US and then joined Brian. So that was sort of the journey. And then Brian and I have been working together until today.
So what a shift from where you were, what degree you went to, and where you ended up with.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I think one of the things that I've always felt is that the degree I got as an undergrad was such an unusual degree. It was about large scale system management. And so, it sounds goofy, but really you're looking at ecosystem, you're looking at optimizing a certain part of that ecosystem, and you learn how to manage a lot of variables to create a specific outcome or result. So that degree probably helped me as much, or maybe more than my business degree, in terms of my consulting over the years, strangely enough.
Mm. So you bring up a very prolific point as to the systems when we talk about the ecosystems, because the variables are prolific and there's so many factors just to keep things going, and yet it never ceases to amaze me how nature has created this beautiful dance that just is in perfect harmony, unless of course we go and disturb it. And recently I was listening to one of the TED Talks where they had talked about that they had closed off some of the coral reefs just for 6 months, and how it came back with beautiful growth. And not sure if it was lobsters or another, a couple of sea creatures, which the fishermen did the fishing much bigger than before. So as we talk about nature, Michael, share with us as to what were the lessons you learned from that industry, from your degree, and transferred into the banking industry.
That's I was only in banking a little while, so mostly my life has been in consulting. But that's a part of it always been with me. That I grew up in the country. It was very, very rural. We didn't have our first stoplight in the county until I graduated from high school. So it was a very small area, small in terms of population. And so I've always had an appreciation for the quieter nature and the perspective you get when you're not part of a frenetic environment. And I've gotten into several frenetic environments since then, but it's a grounding that I've always appreciated. And I think you have sort of this aesthetic that you develop as a young person that you carry with you throughout your life. And I was very lucky, very blessed to have not only good influences around me, but also a great environment to be in. And I know how rare that is for so many people. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I'm so much more appreciative of it now, and understanding when people don't have that, what sometimes they can miss out on a little bit in life.
Yeah, powerful. So as you kind of went into consulting.
Don't mean to interrupt you. Just one quick question. I just got a note from Brian that he's not going to be able to make the call.
Oh, so listeners, we did have another guest, and unfortunately the Brian will not be able to join us. So thank you for sharing that with us, Michael.
Well, I apologize on the behalf of Brian. I know he really wanted to be here, but he's not able to make it work technically right now. So I appreciate the chance to talk to you on one-on-one. So here we are.
We understand, and things happen, and that's one of the things that, and let's dive into that, is uncertainty is something that has become certain in today's day and age, especially with what's been going on since past almost 2 years, beginning of 2020. So when that happens, when this uncertainty happens, it shakes human beings. And when it shakes human beings, it's what's going to happen. And as it is, there's so many different mindsets that people have to create to adjust to the regular world, the old normal world as we speak. And who knows if we'll go back to that ever. So tell us what different types of mindsets you have seen and what causes those.
That's a really good question. Our work that Brian and I do together is based upon mindset as much as anything else. In fact, when we talk about change and implementation, execution, really, if you're gonna create different results, there are two things you have to deal with. One is the actions you're going to take to create the new results, but the underlying mindset of how we think and how we believe. And I like to ask people, is the belief that your beliefs are true? And the reason I ask that question is we obviously we believe them to be true, but the question is, are they really true? And I think true is there are some things that are true with a capital T, but there's also some things that are not necessarily one thing or the other. It depends on how you approach them. And so I think mindset is really a powerful way to create change, because I think it's where change begins. And if you think about how we think and how we believe, we're unconscious of most of that in the moment. We don't think about our beliefs. We don't think about our underlying assumptions about how things work. And then we encounter some situation and those assumptions pop up and we act on those assumptions, and then we go back and we become unconscious of them again. So I think the mindset is one of those things that for us anyway has always been a central core of what we've done with our clients, and helping people to see the thinking shift that then supports the action shift. And that's really, we wrote a book called The 12-Week Year about almost 20 years ago now. That we self-published it. It was published by Wiley in 2013. But anyway, we wrote the book, and it was about executing in 12-week execution cycles, to look at your success failure cycle as a 12-week cycle versus a 12-month cycle. And the folks that got that thinking shift had tremendous results pretty quickly. The folks that kind of looked at it as just quarterly planning didn't really get the same benefits. So the way we think about things is up to us, and the way that we think about things really truly affects the life we experience. Did I lose you?
Do you think any of that might be related as well in terms of thinking?
There was a little dropout. Could you ask that question again? I couldn't hear the question.
Absolutely. So basically what I'm sharing is that what you have talked about is a 12-work week, whether you're setting it for goals or you are thinking in terms of your performance. So if we talk about stock market, companies are talking quarterly performance reviews as well. So any relation between the two?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when we talk quarterly, we're always thinking in terms of the annual execution cycle, and that is a very unproductive way to think about time. Speaking of mindset, because we always believe that there's a lot of opportunity in the year, a lot of time in the year, and so we don't act with urgency early in the year. And then later, as the year dwindles towards the last 12 weeks or so, the last quarter, people tend to have a much higher level of activity, and they do things they weren't willing to do earlier. So the way they're thinking about time and experiencing time affects the way that they get results. And I think with the 12-week year, the stock market, looking at how they look at things, having gotten some training a long time ago in finance, I do sort of believe in efficient markets, but at the same time, I know that markets are efficient based upon people's thinking, and so sometimes thinking is flawed, and you can have groupthink that isn't really, in my view, isn't really good in terms of pricing stocks. So, I think that quarterly numbers, things like that, it's almost as if the market seems to react to that stuff because they're expecting one set of numbers and they get another set, and so they react in a way that goes up or down. But I think the numbers themselves, it's almost this artificial reporting structure, I guess, is what I'm thinking, is that you've got these quarterlies and you've got these annual reports that come out, and people respond to those numbers in a way that changes the stock price. But the companies internally knew where they were going to be well before the market did, and I guess that's an inefficiency out there.
Right. It can definitely be construed as in different ways, going back to the perspectives and as you were talking about the beliefs. So tell us, have you ever experienced a mindset where you were caught up or felt stuck and then move past a situation?
You've got some great questions. I love your questions. They're not the usual ones that I get, so they challenge me in a moment. I think if I was going to look at my limiting beliefs where I've kind of been stuck, I've always been uncomfortable stepping into situations where I'm working with experts in an area that I'm not an expert. So I feel comfortable when I know a lot of information about the situation that I'm in, and when I step into areas where I'm not the expert, I tend to feel uncomfortable in those moments. And it's not that I have to understand their roles or their jobs better than they do, but I've got this belief that that's credibility. And if I know as much as they do, that gives me credibility. But if you wait to learn as much as your clients know, you'll never have any value to add. So it's just a challenge that I've had, and I'm aware of it. It's something that's never really gone away. But as I have worked through that, I've learned that they know what I know isn't as much as they know, right? So I just have to accept that, and what I know is different than what they know. If they were just looking for people like them, right, they could just hire more of them. They want somebody with a different perspective, with a different way of seeing the world, and it's just taken me a while to kind of accept that and step out into that with clients that I don't necessarily feel the same level of expertise with. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's one of the biggest things I'm challenged by.
It makes perfect sense, because what happens is that we stand in our own way. And as we are talking about the beliefs, oh, I have to, I should, I oughta, I got to. And when we have these traps that I have to be better than everybody else, or I have to be as knowledgeable as them, I have to be performing perfectly at times. And when that happens, we're standing in our own way because we are so caught in that mind chatter that we're not able to hear what other person is saying. So forget about going for active listening. You can't even hear what the other person is saying. And that's one of the things I wanted to bring to our audience, that it's so critical that if you don't know, it's okay to share you don't know. Because think about it. How many people know about everything? If everybody knew about everything, life would be extremely boring. And what you shared is so powerful. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that things don't go away. It's about we learn how to respond to them. And then they just become your companion. It's like a shadow. When you're walking in the sun, that shadow is following you and you don't even realize it as to it's there.
Yeah, and I think sometimes those shadows cause you to do more than you might otherwise do. They help to keep you sharp, and I think that's always a good thing. There's a bright side and a dark side, right? And I think the bright side is that you can use that energy in a positive way. And as I told you what my dad told me when I was younger, do your best, and that's all you can do. That's because that's how I was even as a kid. And so he said, look, do your best. If you do that, that's enough.
Do your best. Yes, I love that, because my dad used to say that to me as well. And of course, anytime, even if I talk with him today, he'll say, did you do your best? What's there to be worried about? It's our expectations of ourselves that pull us down so much. And it's fascinating that sometimes these expectations can cause us to fail. So, as we are talking about it, let's kind of switch the direction and talk about the victim mindset as to how do you recognize, or how do you define, based on your experience, what's a victim mindset and how can people get out of it?
That's a great question. And as we start that, I want to make sure that people understand I'm not talking about what psychologists call the victim syndrome. That's where people have actually had some traumatic event in their lives, typically done by someone to them, and there's a mental process that they go through. And that's not what we're talking about. When we talk about a victim mindset, it's really just the way of looking at circumstances and situations and how you perceive them. It's the way you think about them. And I think one of the things about the victim mindset is that they look at external events and people as being predominantly the cause of where they are in the moment. So somebody let me down, and that's why I'm where I'm at. The environment, I got this thing happened outside of me, and now I'm stuck because that thing happened. And the problem with that view is that while those things may have contributed to your current situation, there's really not much you can do about other people and other events. Those are outside of your control. So if those things have stopped you, you're stuck. You can't resolve that. And so what the victim mindset really is focused on blame. And the blame is looking typically at the past, or maybe it's in the moment, but they're not looking towards the future. The blame keeps you kind of stuck on what is and what was. And that mindset is often then it repeats because you're so focused on what you don't control. You keep seeing that stuff. You see what you look for in many cases.
Yeah, that's very powerful. So, okay, you see what you see, and that's what you're looking. How can you hold yourself accountable?
That's a great question because accountability is not an on-off switch. There's nobody who's completely unaccountable and nobody who's fully accountable. We all are somewhere on that spectrum. And so the first thing is to really look at the degrees of freedom. In my view, this is how I see it, to look at the degrees of freedom you have in any situation. It may not be what you want. You might not have all the degrees you'd like to have or choices you could make, but you always have some. And I think that the accountable mindset is looking at what you can do. It's looking at the current situation, assessing it, and it takes that information. It doesn't ignore mistakes. It doesn't ignore, what I would call failing, but it doesn't get stuck there. It's looking at, okay, so that happened. Given that, and given what I can do now, what's the best choice going forward? And it really lets you let go of those emotional, viewpoints of other people and other events, and just be more pragmatic about what comes next. And it's not that we don't get taken advantage of, and it's not that there aren't barriers, but it's what are you going to do about that? Are you going to be stuck with the external, or are you going to focus on the choices you have? And I think that accountability is all about choice, and it's about the free will to either do the stuff that you'd like to do to move forward, or not to do that stuff. And it's to look for the future versus looking at the past through blame.
And let's say so many people say that I want to make a change, I want to shift my mindset, but there is something that holds me back. What would you tell that person? Do you have any quick tips that they can walk away with that, okay, I'm going to implement X, Y, and Z, and that will help me bring the accountability in my life?
That's a great question. And so some like I said, I'm not a psychologist, and so I don't delve into psychology, but there's a lot of stuff that we can do that's I think very productive in terms of our thinking. And so I have a story. I was working with a wholesaler in a financial services firm, and she worked she worked with her agents that were also part of the firm to put packages together to get them to go out and produce close business. And she also worked with external agents, and she was an internal and an external wholesaler. And so with the external agents, she was always afraid to ask for the business. So she'd present a case, she'd present the product package and how she was going to support it. And then they might be able to choose from other wholesalers as well. And she just didn't want to ask for the close because she was afraid by doing that, she was going to get told no. She said, if they want to, I don't want to be pushy. And I don't, they know what I'm can offer. If it's the best deal, they'll pick me. And I said, okay, so let's look at that a minute. So if you don't ask, what happens? Well, very often I get told no. So not asking creates the no. So what's the polar opposite mindset? So here's the thing. Here's the polar opposite thinking. What's the polar opposite mindset that could be true? Because you don't know if you're right or not. You don't know if asking for the close is going to create the no, and you don't know if it won't. So what we said is, what's the polar opposite thought? And she said, well, it would be that if I ask for the close, it's going to get the yes. Right. And so I know this sounds really basic, but she was stuck by this. And so she started thinking, okay, so maybe it is I get the yes if I ask, because I don't get it anyway if I don't ask. So she started asking for the close. Right. And she hit her annual numbers by the end of September, because all of a sudden she was just going and calling everybody saying, I want the business, yes or no. And people were saying yes. And that thought, that simple little thought that wasn't for some major event in her life that made her think that was the way reality worked. It was just a belief about a simple question she was going to ask, and it changed everything for her. So it's important, I think, to take a step back and see, what's the thinking that's keeping me stuck? What's the thought that causes me to behave the way I behave right now, which creates the results I'm getting now? And what's the polar opposite thought to that? Because we don't know, like I said, we don't know if the beliefs we hold are true. Some of them are with a capital T, and I'm not arguing that, but we have a lot of beliefs, and we don't examine those, and yet they drive our behavior. So it's just getting good at being aware of the outcomes you're getting. Are they what you want? If they're not, what's the thought that drives it? If it's a thought that drives it that could be incorrect, what's the polar opposite? And then think about that, and then try acting from that thought.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty basic.
Absolutely. Very powerful. So what I'm hearing is that it is a simple reframing. Any thoughts you have, oh, what if I could fail? And if you were to flip the switch and share, what if I were to get a yes? Or what if I were to succeed? And going and taking that action.
That's exactly right. Because, if you think about it, our thinking drives our behaviors, and our behaviors drive our results. So if we look at our results and we say, I'm not right now, let's say you talked about I could fail at something. So right now I'm not doing this in my life because I think I would fail at it. Well, by not doing it, you're actually failing at it, right? So the outcome you're creating is based upon the thinking you have. So if I want different results, then what are the behaviors that drive it? And then once I understand what those behaviors are, what are the belief systems beneath that behavior? And are those right? What's the polar opposite? And I love what you're saying about the mindset and the shifting of it, because I think that's the foundation of accountability. I mean, it's really seeing the choices that we have and paying attention, not to what happened, but what can I do, right? And it's not looking at the past. It's looking forward. And the habit of looking at the past and blaming the past for where I'm at is unproductive. Even if there's a reason to blame, it's really super unproductive. And letting go of that being right. Okay, I don't have to be right. I don't have to win. I just have to change.
And you talk about different models for mindset. Do you have any model that you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, I think the thing that I would say is that there's a lot of our thinking that's neutral. It doesn't really affect us one way or the other. I mean, we'll have beliefs, 1,000 of them, 1,000,000 of them, and so it's important not to get carried away with examining all your thinking. In my view, I mean, it may be a great pursuit, but it could be pretty unproductive. The way that I approach it is that what's important to me in life, what do I want in my life, right? What's important, and whether I have a vision or I've got a set of values I want to live out, but typically we recommend you have a vision that represents a life well led. And then you say, okay, if that's what I want, what does that imply for what I should be doing today? And am I doing those things today? And we help people create a plan so that they can clarify what those things are. But then I've got to confront, am I willing to take those actions or not? Because I've got some beliefs about what I want in the short term, unconscious beliefs, and I've got this stated intention for the future, and those can be in conflict. And so I just say that if I have an easy model, it's that results, actions, thinking model. What are the results I want? What do I want in my life? What are the behaviors that are going to drive that? And then what's the thinking that are driving my current behaviors? Simple as you can be.
Yeah, very powerful. So as people are thinking about what am I willing to do? And that is the crux of the matter. That taking action, because think about it, when we look at the numbers, when we look at the statistics, only 8 to 9% of people are able to achieve their goals when they have set resolutions for the New Year's.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have any other insights over there, because accountability is the piece that's missing for taking action. So any other tips that you may have that people can implement very quickly?
Yes, I do. So on the specific thing of setting goals and failing, research shows that on average people fail 50% of the time with a well-written plan. And typically New Year's resolutions aren't even a well-written plan. They're just something they want to make happen, right? So what happens when I have a goal and I struggle to make it happen, 8% are successful, 92% therefore are not, is that I haven't really paid attention to the cost, and I've confused interest with commitment. So I'm interested in losing weight. I'm interested in doing something different in my life, but I'm not really committed to it. But I'm interested enough that I say I'm committed. But I also have other things I'm interested in. I'm interested in my personal comfort. I'm interested in other pursuits. And so sometimes my other interests can be in conflict with my stated interest, my intention, right? I want to lose weight can be in conflict with the fact I like Italian food. I like to sit on the couch and watch football or whatever. Those interests can be in opposition to one another. And so what I recommend is that you look at what's my goal, what's my stated intention, right? And then what are my conscious desires to do that? And then what are the things that I'm unconscious of that are keeping me from doing that? So we had a client of ours who wanted to lose weight. And I used the example already a little bit, but he wanted to lose weight, and he would bet his teammates that I will lose weight. If I don't lose this weight, I'll pay you money. If I lose the weight, you'll pay me money. They always took the bet because he never lost the weight. And finally, he just realized, I like good Italian food and I like red wine too much, and I'm not going to give it up. I'm just not. And then he was fine. He didn't, he's happy, he's healthy, and he never lost the weight, but he's no longer stressed out about it. Now, that's not what I recommend. I recommend you hit your goals. I'm not saying that, but you have to reconcile those underlying desires, because if you don't, you're just always going to be in conflict and always falling short.
I really like that. What you're talking about, reconciling your intentions and commitment. And that's the piece that if they're aligned, and this kind of brings us back to something very beautiful, is aligning yourself with your values, aligning with what is it that you really want. Sitting down, getting into the dirt and seeing, these are the areas I don't like to lean into. These are the areas I like to lean into. And then also, if you don't want to lean into it, is there a way where you could have a path which is designated by small incremental milestones? Because what happens is that sometimes we go for those large, big, audacious goals because everybody's talking about go out there, take that bold step, set audacious goals. And in that, we lose out sometimes by not even achieving a piece of it. So, how about if you were to break it down to small goals and start achieving that? Because, as they say, the journey of a mile or whatever it is begins with a single step.
It start from where you are. That's the best advice I could give you. You may want to be somewhere else, but you are where you are. And so what's the next step from where you are? And then I agree, it's those small steps. There was a book written by BJ Fogg a few years ago, I think, maybe a couple of years ago, called Tiny Habits. And I like the title of it because Tiny Habits, there's a lot of other books out there on habits. I'm not saying anything badly or anything bad about them, but it was all in the concept of start very small and then be successful and recognize that you've been successful. And then it kind of builds on that, right? So if you have a desire to be able to do 100 push-ups and you currently can't do one, to create a plan that you're going to start doing 100 push-ups a day, you're going to struggle at that and probably fail. So maybe what you do is you just get down and get on the floor and get in the push-up position, and you just get used to doing that. But you have to kind of start from that perspective wherever you are, and it's not that you don't make progress, but you're right about if you set a goal that's going to cause you to fail, then it can be disheartening. But at the same time, and the research shows that if you do look at those barriers that are between you and the goal, and they're big barriers, and you could even overemphasize them, it kind of gets you ready for the battle too. So change is a messy thing. I don't think there's really one way to change, and I think it's we're all kind of walking through that path every day, right? And we're all learning.
Absolutely. It is situation specific, it is person specific, it is what you want to achieve. And for some, big, hairy goals will get them going. It will challenge them because they are looking for adventure. So it's about knowing yourself and what gets you going. If it is small goal, set a small goal. If it is a big goal, set a big goal. So it's totally what we share here. It's about taking that and applying to your specific situation. So, Michael, share with us a bit about your book and where people can find you.
All right. Yeah. So we wrote a book. Brian and I have written 3 books together. The most recent book is Uncommon Accountability, and it came out published by Wiley at the end of December. And when we talk about the 12-week year, that's our execution system. The foundational principle of that system is accountability. And we have a very different view of accountability than most people do. In a nutshell, accountability is the belief that you cannot hold somebody else accountable. The only person you can hold accountable is yourself. And that's because accountability is ownership. It's ownership of your choices. It's ownership of your outcomes, and the willingness to engage with that to get better if that's your intention. And so I can't be held accountable because nobody can make me take ownership. Ownership is an internal decision, and that's the power of accountability. So when we talk about accountability, people think about accountability systems implying negative consequences or positive consequences to shape behavior. If you're a boss, that's what you'll be thinking most often. But that's the opposite of accountability. And if you hold people accountable through those consequence models, you're really just applying consequence management. You're not helping people gain accountability. So I think accountability is a personal choice, and it's the most powerful mindset you can have is taking ownership. And it's foundational to the execution system we have. And so that's why we wrote a book about it. It's about what is true accountability. And in our views, it's not what most people think it is.
Mhm. So, uncommon accountability, taking ownership is something, it's again bringing it back to an individual, and the power lies within an individual. So many times, what happens is my company's like this, my boss is like this. And I'm not saying that situations don't happen. You may be doing everything you can, and yet you may be getting the short end of the stick. That
Mhm.
said, when we're talking about that uncommon accountability, do you have a few strategies that people could use as they begin that journey on it?
Yeah, absolutely. So intuitively, people know what accountability means. We have hundreds and thousands of people, not hundreds of thousands, but hundreds and thousands of people who've come to us and seeking greater levels of accountability. So people understand the value of it personally. But if you go to Webster online or Merriam-Webster online, this was true 18 months ago. I know that stuff changes, but 18 months ago, there were 4 examples in their dictionary about what accountability meant. They were all examples of someone with power, more power than someone else, punishing someone for making a mistake or having a failure. And so what that meant was accountability was about punishment by someone with authority over someone with less authority, which is really an unhealthy relationship. Who wants that, right? So people intuitively know accountability is what it takes to be successful, and yet who wants to get punished by other people? So we've got this really kind of unbalanced definition of accountability. So that's why we talk about accountability as ownership. And I think if you look at how do I take more ownership, it's always focusing on what's the choice I have in front of me, and what can I do to create more choice. And so when I talk about what systems can help you gain accountability, and I'm not tooting my own horn, it could be other systems as well, but it's going to take an execution system where you have a goal about what you want to create. You've got a plan of how you're going to make progress towards that goal. And then accountability is about the choice to either do those things in your plan or not. And learning to make those choices that are aligned with what you say you want versus doing something else that may be more comfortable in the moment. That's the crucible that accountability really kind of shows its value, because accountable people will choose the productive action, the one that's aligned with what they want. Unaccountable people will choose the comfortable action. And when I say that, I'm not saying anybody's unaccountable or accountable. We're all in that continuum, but the choice is either accountable or unaccountable. And we all make those choices every day. So the system is one that gives you the direction you want to go, a plan to get there. And then you're confronted with the choice, do I take those actions or not?
Yeah, taking those uncomfortable actions. And as you started out our conversation, you had mentioned it's a continuum. Folks, so if it's like, okay, I am not taking the action, it's all right. It again, going back to creating that compassion for yourself. Because as you mentioned about, we don't want to be punished by somebody else. And at the same token, you don't want to punish yourself either, because that's the most contrary thing that your brain can handle. It's about getting up again. It's about falling down and staying on the continuum, continuing the journey and building those habits as it works for you. What would you say to that?
I think that's exactly right. I mean, there's first of all, you can't be accountable for everything, right? You're accountable for what you choose to be accountable for. I'm not accountable for things in my life that I don't care about. I'm not invested in them, right? I don't care if um, bad example, but I don't really care if I don't get on social media and respond to people messaging me. It just doesn't matter to me. I'm not accountable for that. I don't get on my social media at all. I'm a social media hermit. Um, and so other people they find a lot of value in that. And so they're very accountable. They follow up with people. I just don't choose to be. So we can't be accountable for everything, but we can be accountable for what we choose to be accountable for. And I think that's a way to kind of avoid this am I accountable for everything mindset. Some people think that way. And when there's a failure, they blame themselves. And ultimately it's a falling down. And if it's important, you find a way to not make that happen again. If it doesn't matter to you, then it's okay. Right? You don't have to be great at everything, but really being accountable for what you choose to be accountable for is I think the answer for most people.
Mm, definitely. So that creates the path, choose, where do you want to be accountable for, and where you want to do. Because as you mentioned, you cannot be accountable in each and every single area. It's about where you want. What's the definition of your success? What's important to you? What's priority to you? So thank you for sharing your wisdom with us.
More than welcome.
And had a great conversation. Thank you, Michael.
I enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, audience, because without you, the show would not be possible. We love serving you and supporting you, so reach out to us and share with us what area of your life you need support in. And we will bring experts for you and help you live the life you deserve and you want. And thank you, Jason, for making the show technically possible. And we'll see you. Be well until next time. Take care.
Thank you for being part of Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. We hope you have learned more about how to start living the life you want. Each week on Beyond Confidence, you hear stories of real people who have experienced growth by overcoming their fears and building meaningful relationships. During Beyond Confidence, Divya Parekh shares what happened to her when she stepped out of her comfort zone to work directly with people across the globe. She not only coaches people how to form heart connections, but also transform relationships to mutually beneficial partnerships as they strive to live the life they want. If you are ready to live the life you want and leverage your strengths, learn more at www.divyaparekh.com. And you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. We look forward to you joining us next week.